Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News for this Friday, the 7th day of June, 2024. As we bring you these stories every day, there's a number of them that are very frustrating when we get them originating from the United States and what they attempt to tell Israel to do and the rest of the world to do. But sometimes the stories are more than frustrating. Sometimes you just want to scream when you have to read these stories, and that's the situation we're in today. Stories 1 and 4 of the ones we're going to give you right now make me want to scream, and I'm sure many of you will want to scream when you hear the story. So here we go. Headline number 1, Joe Biden: we have to get a ceasefire in Gaza because the Arab world agrees. The U.S. has insisted that the proposal is on the table until such a time as Qatar and Egypt report that the proposal has been rejected. U.S. President Joe Biden stressed the importance of a Gaza ceasefire, which he said has the backing of Israel, which it doesn't, by the way, and most of the international community, in an interview he gave to ABC while visiting France for the 80th anniversary of D-Day. We have to get a ceasefire, he said in an interview published late Thursday night, close to 1 week after he unveiled a three-phase deal that sets a pathway for the return of the 124 hostages, with which at least 43 of them are dead, we're told, and an end to the war in Gaza. When pressed if he thought that Prime Minister Netanyahu was on board with the agreement, Biden responded that he has said publicly that he is. No, he hasn't. In fact, he said just the opposite. Our European friends are in on it. Well, that's true. They are. Eyeing Iraq and Syria, the IDF is preparing to fight in Lebanon. We know that's going to happen too, and we're going to talk about this in a couple of minutes. This agreement is also backed by Egypt, the Saudis, and almost the whole Arab world. He spoke as the U.S., Israel, and the countries mediating the deal through third-party talks. Egypt and Qatar are awaiting a response to what Biden has characterized as an Israeli offer. And of course, it's Hamas that hasn't responded yet. All they're doing is giving negative signals, but no official response. So again, our first story, which makes us want to scream, we have to get a ceasefire. We have to get a ceasefire. In other words, we can't let Israel win the victory here. Now, story number 2, and 2 and 3 are going to set the stage for number 4 here. Decision on whether to go for a ground maneuver in Lebanon may be made soon. We've been talking about this, and here we have another story along this line. The winds of war gripped the Golan Heights this week with intensity. Dozens of forest and pasture fires broke out in the northern plateau in Katzrim and up to the western slopes above Kibbutz Gadol. Hezbollah has been hit in recent weeks by IDF operations. Their desire to respond to take revenge burns inside them. Therefore, they chose to increase the range of fire for military targets in the Golan Heights. This is how Hezbollah broadcasts it is looking for revenge, in addition to preparing the fighting space for the day when Israel will make a significant move in Lebanon. And we talked about this. Not only are at least 60,000 people stranded from their homes since October 7th in the northern part of the country, another 120,000 have to learn how to live in air raid shelters now because the bombing and the missiles and the drones are coming further south, coming into the northern part and the central part of Israel. But we have another story along this line, headline 3, an apparent deepest attack of the war. Drone launch from Lebanon strikes near Nazareth, and that's way down south from the border. The IDF says it failed to intercept projectile, investigating why sirens didn't warn of incoming drone. Hezbollah doesn't immediately take the credit. A drone launched from Lebanon, likely by Hezbollah terror group, impacted in an open area in the Jezreel Valley near Nazareth in northern Israel on Friday afternoon, the Israeli military said. It took the Israeli Defense Force 8 hours to provide an update on the incident, during which an interceptor missile was launched and sirens had sounded in towns adjacent to Nazareth. According to the IDF, it carried out a failed attempt to intercept the drone before the aircraft impacted in an open field, causing no injuries or major damage. Residents in the area reported seeing a drone missile launch. Siren warning of incoming rockets had sounded in other cities during the incident amid fears of falling shrapnel following the interception. And again, there were no siren warnings of an incoming drone amid the incident. The IDF, of course, is investigating why it failed to down the drone and why sirens did not sound. Okay, with all this going on in Lebanon, we've talked about how terrible it is. The people that are removed from their homes have been since October 7th on the border of Metula, Kiryat Shmona. Now the drones and the ordnance coming down much further down south, coming to places like Kitzrim, coming to places like Nazareth now, way down south. It's time that Israel must do something. They said they're waiting to hear from the political echelon what to do. So then we get this headline. And believe me, people, I literally wanted to scream with all that's been going on when I read this headline. I'm going to read you the story. The U.S. warns Israel that a limited war in Lebanon could push Iran to intervene. The U.S. warned of a scenario in which Lebanon would be flooded with terrorists from pro-Iranian militias coming from Syria, Iraq, and even Yemen. This is from the Jerusalem Post. So here we have it. The Biden administration made it clear to Israel that the U.S. does not believe that a limited war in Lebanon or a small regional war are realistic options, as it would be difficult to prevent them from expanding. I'm trying not to scream here. All right. The U.S. warned that a scenario in which Lebanon would be flooded with terrorists from pro-Iranian militias coming from Syria, Iraq, and even Yemen. The Biden administration advised Israel in recent weeks against the idea that a limited war could be waged in Lebanon and warned that such a move could push Iran to intervene. This is what two senior American officials and an Israeli official briefed on the talks told Walla, W-A-L-L-A. That's one of the news agencies in Israel, by the way. All right, why it's important. Now they're going to go through the reasons. The exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah has been going on since October 7th, and it's increased dramatically in the last 2 weeks, which has caused senior officials in the IDF and the cabinet to call for a significant expansion of the fighting against Hezbollah. Well, what would you do if you got more and more drones and rockets shot at you? Senior American and Israeli officials said the IDF and the defense ministry are increasingly concerned that the situation in Lebanon is reaching a turning point. No kidding. The U.S. and France have tried to find a diplomatic solution to reduce tensions on the border, but have not yet made progress. And they won't, because Iran's behind it. They want to continue to hassle Israel from all sides, from south in Gaza, from the central part of the country, and Judea, Samaria, and of course, the northern part of the country from Lebanon. So, of course, no progress is made. Preventing an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah that could lead to widespread destruction in Lebanon and Israel was a central goal of the Biden administration in its efforts to prevent the fighting in Gaza from expanding into a much wider regional conflict. The Biden administration believes it will be impossible to restore peace to the Israel-Lebanon border without a ceasefire in Gaza. And then we go on. In the news center, the article says, the exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah along the border has been steadily escalating for the past 8 months. Many of the Israeli settlements near the border are deserted, like we said. More than 60,000 Israelis who were evacuated from the area after Hezbollah began attacking northern Israel on October 8th have not yet returned to their homes. Both sides have increased the range of their attacks in recent weeks. Hezbollah launched drones and rockets at military targets up to 50 kilometers from the border. Earlier this week, Hezbollah attacks and extremely hot weather ignited massive forest fires across northern Israel that took more than 48 hours to extinguish. Plus, there was a terrible heat wave, one of the worst ones they've ever had, where the temperature was something like 46 degrees Celsius. Now, 38 Celsius is 100 degrees, 46 is in the 100 teens, and that's how hot it was. You've got the fires, you've got the wind blowing, and that's destroying thousands and thousands of acres there in northern Israel. The fires and growing public criticism of the government over the war of attrition in the north led to an emergency meeting of the war cabinet on Tuesday night. And then they have something called the big picture. A senior security official said the situation has been escalating since May, when Hezbollah was able to carry out successive attacks against the UAVs against Israeli targets that the IDF was unable to intercept. And that's one of the problems, too. They've had some of these, drones that come in that have not been able to be intercepted. And they're more precise in the old days when they had these Grad rockets, or call it Katyusha rockets, which would go up and only God knows where they would hit. The ordnance, the rockets that are coming in are getting more and more precise. At the same time, Hezbollah began launching Birkin rockets with warheads of 1,000 to 500 kilograms of explosive material, which caused heavy damage among the IDF bases along the border. And what they say, well, here comes the State Department. This guy, Matthew Miller, again, that doesn't seem to know much going on, said Wednesday that the U.S. remains deeply concerned about the risks of escalation along the Israeli-Lebanon border. We are engaged in intensive diplomatic talks and intensive diplomatic negotiations to try to prevent this conflict from escalating beyond control. He added, Israel has been claiming to us privately for a long time, and they have said this publicly as well, that their preferred solution to this conflict is diplomatic. And that's what they've tried, but they're getting no response because Iran, who is running Hezbollah, just like in Gaza, doesn't want a diplomatic solution. They want to keep firing at Israel from all sides. So finally, what's next? Well, at the War Cabinet meeting on Tuesday, no decisions were made, but the IDF presented several options for expanding the fighting, including ground invasion aimed at driving Hezbollah's Radwan force away from the border, a senior Israeli official said. He emphasizes since October 7th, the instructions the IDF received from the political echelon were to focus on defeating Hamas in Gaza and to avoid a war in Lebanon. The Israeli official said this policy change could have far-reaching consequences. The Israeli official said that a war with Hezbollah or a limited operation in Lebanon would have enormous consequences for Israel. And after such an operation would cost many lives and resources, it would likely lead to an agreement similar to the one Israel and Lebanon are trying to achieve now. We need to understand this before making decisions, the Israeli official said. So let's get this straight. The U.S. is warning that it's going to be a real problem if you ramp up the fighting and come in and try and, get rid of Hezbollah there in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah continues to bombard them. Is that what you want to keep going? Keep the 60,000 people away from their homes, 120,000 and counting. Need to learn to spend time in bomb shelters. And now it's even getting further, going as far down south as Nazareth. So what do? Well, we've got to have a ceasefire now, Joe Biden says. The problem is, which they don't understand, Iran, who is running the show, does not want a ceasefire. They want to keep the attacks against Israel continuing from Lebanon, from Judea, Samaria, and from Gaza. And in doing so, they want to make Israel a pariah in the sight of the world for doing what? For merely responding to the attacks against them. And it's sad how all this is working. The PR for Hezbollah, Hamas is looking good around the world, where people are saying how these poor people are just responding to the terrible treatment they get by the Israelis. Again, nothing could be further from the truth when you look at the big picture, but truth really doesn't seem to matter here. And so again, we want to encourage you. We have new people every day coming on this site. We have a website, Educating Our World, where we have a number of books, 12 books on Bible prophecy, including one called 25 Signs We're Near the End. It is a free download from the website and goes into great detail about what's going to take place at the time of the end, the various things we should expect to see according to Scripture, and the things we're seeing right now, such as Israel searching continually for peace, Israel being in the spotlight of the world, Israel being isolated from the world, and the world hating Israel, and the United States showing themselves why they won't be a player in last days Bible prophecy, by not attacking Israel directly, but indirectly, and allowing Israel to be vulnerable because of their enemies taking advantage of what the United States is trying to force Israel to do. And now Joe Biden says we not only need a ceasefire in Gaza, there's no way. We don't want to have a war in Lebanon now. Well, we've got them, Joe, and you've got to do something about them. So let's see what happens. All right. The good news is God's in control of all this, and he's going to set the stage. He's going to set everything fine someday when he returns in the person of Jesus Christ. But let me tell you, as an American, it's frustrating after yesterday, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, remembering what those brave soldiers, there's still some veterans there after 80 years, they're still met there in France with the D-Day ceremonies, what they went through for us, what America, how they banded together in such a tremendous way as the greatest generation during the Second World War. And this is what we give back to them here in 2024. It is really, really sad. But again, it's been predicted by Scripture. We expected this, but to see it, it still hurts. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with you again tomorrow with the latest headlines. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.